travel all over the countryside. Ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands, no matter whatever that happens to be. Ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, begin and then join in the fun. Travel all over Australia. Ask the Leyland, ask the Leyland, ask the Leyland brothers.
For all those people that are interested in unusual vehicles, we certainly have something different for you in this episode of Ask the Leyland Brothers. It would probably rate as the biggest cross-country vehicle ever built. It was built in Australia, and we find it here at Redcliffs in Victoria. It's called Big Lizzie.
Then we're going to central Queensland, up here to the famous Anakie Gemfields, where we're going to follow through the story of sapphire mining, right from digging the sapphires from the ground to the selling of the sapphires. Then we're going to show how they're cut and the beauty that comes from these magnificent stones found in central Queensland.
Well, if really big vehicles are what you're interested in, then the place to come is Redcliffs in Victoria. Now, we've come to Redcliffs at the suggestion of Max Thorburn, who lives in Mildura, and he reckons that Big Lizzie might make an interesting subject for our Ask the Leyland Brothers program. Well, this is Big Lizzie. And believe it or not, Big Lizzie is driven by a single-cylinder engine. The huge motor, which is housed back in this compartment behind me here, runs on crude oil, and it was used way back in 1915 when it was first invented, in those days, for transporting wool. That was the original intention, at least. Big Lizzie didn't actually see out its days as the inventor had imagined, but there are some interesting features. One of them, for instance, are these rather peculiar wheels. They've got these strange pads on there, on both the inside and the outside wheel, and as the wheels roll along, it kind of lays those down a bit like a sand ladder, because the inventor was a humane sort of a person, and he was interested in having the heavy loads put on the early camel teams that used to transport all the wool in inland Australia eased a little bit, and he invented this machine to go across sandy country where the camels were used. Probably one of the most remarkable things about Big Lizzie is its enormous size. In the old days, it used to travel across the outback countryside, practically clearing the country as it went. The unique thing then was it was almost like a complete self-contained living quarters. It had living quarters, it had a blacksmith shop, and they had their own cows and everything for milk and so on. And used to travel around the country like a small town on wheel, well, sort of wheels anyhow. As you can see, it's a rather unique system, and the original idea was developed in 1908, prior to the First World War, and this machine was built in 1914, although it was completed in 1915. It took a whole year to construct Big Lizzie. And this system was superseded later on when they developed the tracks for the tanks for the military vehicles. The same system was used on all the wheels. If you go to the back here, you can see the larger wheel, a very much larger version of the front thing. It's exactly the same principle. It's sort of like laying down a sand ladder, and then the wheel rolls along on front of it, and then another one flops into place.
The thumping of the massive 14-inch bore engine and the monster-like gait of Big Lizzie resounded through the bush for miles as it moved along at 1 mile per hour. This monster of the outback never saw service as its inventor imagined, carrying bales of wool. Instead, with its 2-year journey from Melbourne stopped by the flooded Murray River, it carried up to 80 tons of wheat to the rail sidings, and eventually was used to clear the scrub for the soldier settlement at Redcliffs. Big Lizzie had a turning circle of just under 100 metres, and complete with chickens, cows and blacksmith shop on the front platform, the operators could carry out running repairs. A self-contained unit, ideal for the remote regions it had been built for. Not only must Big Lizzie qualify as the largest vehicle ever built in Australia, it must surely earn some recognition as one of the most remarkable inventions in the history of transportation.
This is the main street of Rubyvale in the central Queensland Highlands, about 250 kilometres inland from Rockhampton. Sapphire and Rubyvale are in the Anakie sapphire fields. We're here because of two letters, one from Mrs. B. Leyland of Havisham in New South Wales, who says, could we show some of the interesting aspects of finding these precious stones? Another one from Jacqueline Spencer of Westbury in Tasmania, who says her father went to the Anakie fields and found some beautiful stones, and could we show them? Well, the sapphire story is quite extensive. We're going to show the mining of the sapphires and right through to the cutting of them. Sapphires were discovered here by a railway surveyor in 1875, and by 1890 sapphire mining had become an active industry, with the townships of Sapphire and Rubyvale being established. The road between Sapphire and Rubyvale meanders through the main Anakie Gemfields. The Anakie sapphire fields have had their checkered history of ups and downs. At the moment there's a boom in sapphires. The most obvious thing you see when driving along the road here is the heavy machinery working. But this is not the only method of getting the sapphires from the ground. There's a small family operation, and there's also the holiday fossicker who just uses hand implements. All you need to get started is a miner's right, obtainable at the police station in nearby Emerald, and the basic tools. At the peak of the season, through autumn, winter and spring, there are an estimated 4,000 holiday fossickers and commercial miners on the fields.
Mining, of course, is to get rid of all the topsoil here, which doesn't carry very much wash, but as you can see, there's a wash there that I'm brushing away out, and the wash is falling down. The idea is to get down to the bed of it, and as you're working, not to leave anything behind. It's particularly important that you clean up right down onto that clay bottom, because there are, as you can see there, holes in the clay which is likely to hold sapphires. I'm not saying, of course, that there are sapphires there, but of course there's that chance every time. The more you brush up from the bottom, the better chance. Sapphires being very heavy, of course, they get down to the bottom.
Harry Batomsky from Brisbane is a holiday fossicker. Harry is working in a small miners area, an area set aside for small claims that are hand operated. Sapphires and rubies are the gem varieties of the mineral corundum, a form of aluminium oxide. They are formed deep within the Earth's crust and carried to the surface by volcanic action. The sapphires are contained in ancient deposits of wash, which varies in depth from the surface down to 20 metres or more.
That up and down movement is to bring the heavier stones into the middle. Now, you not only get sapphires, or you're perhaps lucky if you get sapphires, but you bring all the heavier stones in, like ironstone, spinel, and hopefully you'll see that nice bright sapphire on the top.
The moment of truth can be disappointing or rewarding. A couple of small sapphires indicate that Harry is onto something. He just needs more work. Once you have proven an area by fossicking, a claim must be pegged. Small miners' claims are 20 square metres. The use of some mechanised equipment is allowed, such as electric winches and pneumatic drills. Most miners live on their claims, as they must be worked for a minimum of 5 days a week, or the claim is forfeited. To have a look at a small sapphire mine, we're going down to meet Jean and Ray Stoddart. Jean always operates the drill, while Ray shovels. Ray was a plumber in Geelong, Victoria, before they were hooked on sapphires.
Well, after the first 6 months we started to get onto a little bit, not a lot, but It's just the enjoyment that we get out of doing it. That's why we like doing it.
We went down 40 feet and then we struck, as we thought, bottom. And we dug and dug, and I think we dug about 5 foot of porphyry out all the time for such a long way. Then we gradually found a little sapphire, our first big one, and kept going, just chased it in, and we got a pocket full, just, I suppose there'd be, about an ounce in it.
I'm back to front here, but... Right, well, I'll dash up and start the winch up, Jane.
Jean and Ray Stoddart are typical of the miners on the field. They originally came here on holidays and stayed. Operating as a team, Ray and Jean say mining has given them a new lease of life. Every day has the excitement of the possible discovery of a big sapphire. So far, they have found enough to keep them going, and they intend to stay on a while yet. The Anakie Gemfields are the richest and most extensive sapphire fields in the world, with a sapphire-bearing area of 230 square kilometres. The claims around Ruby Vale and Sapphire are mostly taken up by permanent miners with big machinery. Here the pick is exchanged for a bulldozer and the claims are 90 square metres. Most areas now being mined by heavy machinery have been prospected before by the small miners and since abandoned. Huge front-end loaders spread the sapphire-bearing soil out to dry. Once dry, the soil can be loaded into this mobile vibrating screen, which separates the material into oversized, fines and pay dirt. In the past 6 years, big operators have moved into stipulated areas with heavy equipment, which enables them to process vast quantities of sapphire-bearing soil quickly. Pay dirt is hosed down into a slurry, which runs down a chute into a jig which collects the sapphires. This big operation is run by partners Peter Harvey and John Warner. A lot of sapphires are needed to cover the enormous running costs. John shows us some of the rewards.
Well, this is the results of somewhere between, say, 100 yards or 1,000 yards of material, depending on the area, and it's concentrated down by screening it, and then that concentrated or screened wash is brought in here and washed through this jig, and your heavier material sits underneath the lighter material. That's what this business has got out of the farming. Fascination. You've got a variety of sapphire here. There's a little bit of zircon too, but you've got the yellows and greenies and blue.
And what made you come here to the sapphire fields?
Oh, I spent the best part of my 30 years alive farming and cattle, and you know what the returns from that has been over the past few years. Very unrewarding. And the fascination for gems, I think, holds most people, and more particularly myself. So I came out here as a tourist, and here I am, 6 years into it.
John, where do most of the sapphires go that you mine here?
Well, unfortunately for Australia, probably 90% or more go over to overseas countries. primarily to Thailand, where they're cut and marketed throughout the world. Australia's poorer for it, because if the miners got together, we actually supply probably 90% of the world's large precious gems in sapphires. And as a majority supplier, we should dictate the price, but we don't. We get told what we get paid for them, and this is all we can do, we accept it. If we got better organised, that's miner-wise, better administered by the administration, we'd have a very, very lucrative market here for Australia, much more so than it is now.
So a lot of it goes out unknown to the government? Or?
Oh, a lot of it goes out unknown to the government or in various ways, whereby Australia gets no return for it, or very minimal.
And they cut it up, say, in Thailand and resell it overseas as their own sapphire, or is it sold as Australian sapphire?
No, unfortunately, once again for Australia, not are we losing out in the amount of many, many millions of dollars we should get for this rare industry, but we're also losing out on name-wise because the better quality sapphire is sold as, say, Ceylonese, Burmese sapphire, rather than as it should be sold as the good Australian sapphire. When you see Australian sapphire, they always show you some awful rubbish.
Do they? But this is obviously a very good one here.
Yeah, so that's somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000 worth, and if it was, say, cut in Australia, it'd be worth probably 10 times what we'll get for it, or 100 times what we get for it, selling it overseas, and they'll do what they want to do with it.
To find out what happens to the sapphires after you've found them, we'll be back after this break. Once you've found your sapphires, you have to sell them. And to find out how you go about selling the sapphires, we're going to see Russell Hoban talking to a buyer. Rubyvale's main street displays signs of the various sapphire buyers. Most of the big buyers are from Thailand. Russell Hoban often acts as an agent for miners, and the buyers visit Russell regularly to see what he has for sale.
Too small, that's a big one.
This one, wrong cost table.
Ah, very blue that way.
The Thai buyers pay cash for the stones and will buy individual stones or parcels of sapphires like these. They often have an interpreter and a bodyguard accompanying them on their buying trips.
$5 an ounce.
$5?
Yeah.
No, I can't. I think too dear.
Too dear for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you come up a little bit and I'll come down a little bit?
No, I can't. Too dear. Too far distance.
Yeah.
A deal is not always made, but there's more than one buyer on the field.
Until you come back next time.
Okay. Thank
You hear lots of stories of big sapphires on the fields here, but it's very rare to see one. We've been told about a local identity, 90-year-old Mick Stonebridge, who's got a beautiful sapphire almost as big as a matchbox. We're going to see if he'll show it to us. Mick Stonebridge lives alone in this shanty, where he's lived for the last 53 years. Can I take a photograph of your famous sapphire?
Want to?
Mick carries a precious stone in a small bag tied to his belt. He is proud to show it to visitors, but tells everyone it's not for sale. The brilliant party-coloured stone is worth more to Mick than money. To him, it is priceless. It's big. How long ago did you find the stone?
Oh, it was 30 odd years ago.
30 years? Whereabouts was it?
Quarter mile over there.
Just over this way?
Yeah.
Can I have a look? Yes, it must be very precious to you. Thanks for letting us take a photograph of it. The stone has been stolen once, but was returned by the police. It is so well known that it would be virtually impossible to sell, and Mick has many friends on the fields. To see the real beauty of the sapphire, you must see a cut stone. Ola and Russell Hoban have a gem cutting business in Rubyvale and stock all varieties of sapphires in every colour and size.
Put on your finger.
Ola shows Pat a ring, set with 2 party colour and 2 yellow sapphires. Diamond dust impregnated wheels are used to shape the rough sapphire. Up to 2/3 of the stone is lost in the cutting process, and only an expert can judge the best way to cut each individual stone. Sapphires have a hardness of 9, second only to diamonds with a hardness of 10. The biggest sapphires in the world have come from the Anakie fields. The largest black sapphire in the world, the Star of Queensland, was found by a 12-year-old boy in 1934 and was used as a doorstop until its value was realised. It is now in a collection in the United States, valued at more than $180,000. Ola cuts the intricate facets which give the stones their brightness. Although sapphires are commonly believed to be blue, they also come in green, yellow, pink, white or party coloured, which is a combination of 2 or 3 of these colours. Whatever colour you prefer, they certainly hold a magic fascination for a lot of people.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, me in and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia. Brother.